Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I think it's time for another vlog. In this instance, I want to do it because I have a lot of things to talk about, and I can't really find another video to fit them into, so I suppose this is what we're going to be doing. Why not? So, first things first, I'm going to be at the Game Vid Expo in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the 28th to the 30th of March. That will be at the W Hotel in Midtown Atlanta, Georgia, from the 28th to the 30th. The ticket price, I believe, for the whole thing is $30, and it's basically going to be a kind of gigantic meet and greet with a lot of panels. So if you're like sitting around doing Q&A with YouTube people, well, there's going to be an awful lot of that, because there are also going to be a bunch of game developers there doing panels as well. I'll be there alongside various other channels such as Dead Workers Party, Blame the Controller, Kutra, SSHPKC. Of all the potential brands you could have picked, you chose that one. Right. We've also got Sly Foxhound there, and Captain Sparkles, and a bunch of other fairly famous YouTube gamer people. So hopefully I'll see some of you there, if you can make it down there. Say, fairly cheap ticket, and hopefully we can make it entertaining. I know I'm going to be participating in a lot of different panels, pretty much every panel I can get my hands on. I think I'm also going to be participating in a Celebrity Smite show match prior to the Smite $100,000 launch tournament, which is also happening in Atlanta, Georgia on the same date, which should be pretty cool. I like Smite quite a bit, and it actually reminds me I need to go and revisit the damn thing, considering it's about to come out. I've played it during the alpha, the beta, several times, sort of revisiting it, and it's a fun game, so maybe I'll have another look at that one in the future. But yes, that's where I will be from the 28th to the 30th, and you'll be able to come down and watch the panels. I believe they're all getting filmed, I certainly hope so. And that means that if you don't get to go, then you'll be able to catch them at a later date on the VOD. Outside of that, I'm not planning on hitting too many events this year. Atlanta, Georgia is not that far away, so I can actually get there by car, which is not really a big deal, but I hate planes. You know I hate planes. I really don't like flying anywhere, so I've been avoiding a lot of that stuff lately. I'll most likely be hitting E3. I believe we've already got our passes for that, so I guess I'm going. But I won't be at PAX East, which is a bit disappointing for me. It actually clashes with other stuff that I'm doing, plus Jen's leg is still not better. Yeah, so the treatments that she was getting for her broken ankle have not actually done the job, which most likely means she will need proper surgery. So that's a bit of a bind, yes. So I don't really want to drag her around an expo for 3 or 4 days. I'll be avoiding that, but yes, I will be at E3. And the new coverage format, I think, works quite well with E3 now, the ability to produce content based on things that I've seen and not really requiring that direct feed that I originally thought people really cared about. But based on the numbers, I do not believe that is the case anymore. If we look at a lot of the stuff that I got from the last PAX, and most of the stuff that was AAA, where I wasn't able to actually get my full-on recording going with it. A lot of this stuff actually did really well with B-Reel, which was quite surprising. Things like Batman Arkham Origins, that was all B-Reel, and that did really well. Also, Wolfenstein New Order, that did really well. That was also B-Reel. It's definitely a format that seems to work pretty well, and views from PAX were pretty good. So if I can do that with more AAA titles, I think that'll push the views up a little bit more. We can do some more combo interviews and things like that. Yeah, I think there's potential for content there. E3, the last time we went, was completely worthless because we were focusing on direct feed, but it seems like, looking at the numbers, you guys actually don't care as much about direct feed as I thought you did. So where we can, we'll get direct capture, but where we can't, we'll do B-Reel. I'll just give you my impressions. That seems to be enough for you, so I'll stick with that. That means we can get access to a lot of other stuff that we previously turned down, so that should hopefully be good for you. Alright, so let's talk about this random topic, just for no reason. I actually stumbled across this. I've been trying to stay away from Reddit a lot, and I don't post there anymore, but occasionally I look at r/games, and I did find an interesting discussion that I wanted to kind of put my 2 cents in, but since I don't post there anymore, I kind of can't. But I'd like to talk about it anyway, so let's do that. And it's a topic that says, should reviewers factor the price of the game when writing a review? And the statement, it was quite simple, really. It said, I was reading this Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes review, and the final score the reviewer gave was pretty low. One of the factors was that the game was too short for the price tag. But then I asked, should the price be left out when making a review with viewers focusing only on the quality of the game? You know, I think the biggest problem there is the application of a score. And I've said it many times before, I think the score system within games is fundamentally broken. It shouldn't be used because it leads to too many arguments and fights over nonsense. It really does. And a lot of the criticism that's leveled at reviewers isn't actually because of things they've said, but because of how they've scored a title. And this is another pretty good example here. So it's a translation of a French website. This is what this guy is linked to. It's called GameKio. And the score at the end was a 4 out of 10, right? Which is a little ridiculous. And it doesn't really match up to what the actual review says. Obviously, I'm translating from French, so I may have missed a lot of the nuance here. But 4 out of 10 definitely seems unreasonable. And yeah, they factored the price into the score. If you didn't have the score, this wouldn't be a factor, yeah? You could very easily say, well, you know, I really enjoyed the game for what it was, but for the price tag, I don't think there's enough content there. And that's really all you have to say, but you could go further in depth and explain yourself better, and you could give more information to the consumer. But factoring it into the score and then scoring it like that is unacceptable. But again, it's a problem with the score system in general. It shouldn't even be there. And here's the thing about scoring based on price. Prices change. Prices go down over time. So when you nuke someone's Metacritic, and unfortunately for a lot of people that's important, and ideally hope we see a day where Metacritic dies for video games, but at the moment it hasn't done that. Metacritic only accepts the first score. So you cannot go back, adjust the score later based on a price drop, and have it affect the Metacritic. So if that site happens to be influential, then what we're going to see is the Metacritic score of Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes directly affected, which is actually going to piss a lot of people off. It shouldn't be happening. I don't think you should factor it into your score. But then again, I don't think you should be using scores in any way. So I'm fairly extreme when it comes to that. I'm certainly not the only person that believes that scores should be abolished, and I would dearly hope that eventually they do, but I doubt that will happen. There's an obsession with scores in both the gaming media and viewers in general. And unfortunately, there's no way around that, because viewers kind of demand the score and they argue over the score, and hell, a score can be a really good way to drive people to your site. Not only that, but Metacritic is so influential that you could argue you have to give a score in order to be on Metacritic to get the traffic from Metacritic. I would love to see some stats, though. I really would. How many sites actually get real traffic from Metacritic? I'd love to see that, but no one ever releases that information. So, well, I suppose that lines up exactly with what Metacritic is all about. A bunch of shrouded, arbitrary numbers. Screw everything about that website. The counter-argument I suppose you could make about including the price and the score, or even just harping on a lot about the price within the review, even if you don't have a score, is that you should assess the title as is. You can't assess the title based on what it might be later on. A lot of games are kind of worth it for $5, but they're not worth it for $60. The thing is, if you're good at your job and you critique well, then viewers should be able to assess whether or not they feel the game is worth the price that it's currently being offered at based on what you've said. And really, you don't need much more than a passing mention. Because, let's be honest, most of what people complain about when it comes to the price of a title is the length. Yeah, that the length of the game and the amount of content is what really seems to affect their purchase decision. We're seeing a lot of complaints regarding Titanfall and saying, well, this is not worth $60. That makes me scratch my head, and I'll get onto that topic more in depth in a minute. But it does make me scratch my head as to why people would find that offensive. Why is it not okay to sell a multiplayer-only title for $60? Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. It's relevant to tell people that it's a multiplayer-only title, and it's then relevant to say, well, the campaign is X hours long, it's not very good, as I've already said, and there's 15 maps, there are these number of options, this is how the progression system works, and so on and so forth, and through that, people should have enough information to judge whether or not it's worth $60 for them. Because here's the problem with trying to assess based on price. It's so subjective. Ridiculously subjective. Some people are entirely okay with dropping $60 on a multiplayer title. A lot of people complained about Journey, for instance. I was absolutely fine with dropping $15 on Journey. Yeah, I know it's a 2-hour experience. I know that. I know it's got very little replayability. But that experience, the quality of that experience, was good enough for me. It's the same with Brothers. I'm okay with dropping $15 for 2.5 hours worth of gameplay on Brothers, because again, I think the quality's there to justify it. length is not the sole defining feature of value, but it is present in the minds of an awful lot of people. But it varies wildly. Someone that doesn't have a lot of time, like myself, actually values the shorter experiences, whereas someone that doesn't have a lot of money and really wants to sink time into something, they will value the longer experiences. So that's what you've got to describe. I don't think quibbling over the price is actually a useful piece of critique, though. And I think that's something that reviewers and critics in general should avoid outside of simply being objective when giving information. Sure, give your opinion, say, hey, you know, I don't think this is really worth the price, but there's no need to harp on about it, and once you're including it in your score, well, that, as far as I'm concerned, is just bad games journalism. Now, why was I talking about Titanfall? Well, I've seen a few interesting comments about Titanfall, and there seems to be a bit of a backlash against this, and I spoke about it a little bit on the podcast, and it's just the idea of anti-hype, I suppose. Jerks and anti-jerks. Circle jerks, folks. When it comes to these social media sites like Reddit that have upvote, downvote systems, you will find that there's a lot of what is perceived as hive mind behavior going on. What that really is, more often than not, is a prevailing opinion getting upvoted, whereas a dissenting opinion getting downvoted, which is extremely unhealthy and shouldn't be happening, but it does happen. So that gives an interesting impression. And you can see, if you look at other threads, that it might actually go entirely the other way, because that thread gained popularity with a certain subset of people, and the people that either don't agree with it or just aren't interested in it don't visit the thread at all. So you get a really, really biased look at what people actually believe, and it's very easy to get taken in by that, and I've been taken in multiple times by the idea that everyone believes this, and yet it's actually not true. The StarCraft subreddit, like months ago, was really bad on this. We actually saw completely conflicting opinions, both upvoted in the same thread, and everyone saying the same thing, and you get really confused, like, hang on a minute, 12 hours ago there was a thread where everyone was agreeing with the opposite, but what you find is that the people that believe in the opposite went to that thread and upvoted, the people that believe in the other thing went to the other thread, and there wasn't actually that much crossover, and what crossover was there got downvoted. It's not just Reddit that suffers from this, but any forum that doesn't have that kind of system is generally a little bit more balanced, and you see a greater selection of opinions. Even then, though, it's quite hard not to fall into the trap of just sort of joining in the circle jerk and posting something that everyone else kind of agrees with. It's easy, and I suppose it's actually quite pleasurable to some people. It's even a form of socializing. They feel they're part of the discussion, but they're not necessarily adding anything to it. Titanfall seems to be subject to an awful lot of that, and I think there's a number of factors that come into it. The first one being that Titanfall was heavily, heavily hyped by an awful lot of people, including a lot of major press outlets. I mentioned it on the podcast, but IGN has over 600 Titanfall articles. A lot of those are blogs written by users, but if we filter by article, we'll note that there is just a huge, huge amount of Titanfall hype, ridiculous stuff going on with it, and IGN is very guilty of writing hype pieces like 10 reasons you should be excited for Shadow of Mordor, a game that we haven't played yet, and so on and so forth. Combined with the aggressive marketing of a lot of larger game publishers, hype can reach a critical mass, and expectation reaches a critical mass as well. I think Titanfall in particular also falls foul of the console war. The idea that PlayStation 4 fanboys don't want Titanfall to be good because it's not on that platform, so they will aggressively attack that, and the whole thing is goddamn stupid, let's be honest. But this idea of the anti-hype is really, really strange. And I think if you toss in the fact that the developers at Infinity Ward, who were responsible for Modern Warfare, which a lot of so-called core gamers just revile and despise, and then the publishers EA, and it's on Xbox One, yeah, I think you can see why a certain subset of people would be very, very aggressive towards it and post a lot of negativity around it. But it is definitely obnoxious behavior, and a lot of these people are not doing it based on the fact that they've actually played the game and not enjoyed it. They're doing it based on some weird impression that they've got of it by maybe watching a few reviews or just hearing a few forum posts and saying, yeah, you know what, I didn't like it anyway, blah, blah, blah. Which is not useful information for anyone, really, and it's really just part of the noise that comes with games discussion these days, and it's very difficult to avoid that based on the environment that we live in when dealing with video games. So much hype, so much push to pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. This is going to be the killer app. Here's some awards. This is what bothers me the most. Titanfall got a bunch of awards at E3. At E3. Let me read a selection of these out for you. Yeah, you'll absolutely love it. E3 2013 Awards, Most Valuable Game at Gamer, Destructoid Game of the Show, Digital Spy, Best Shooter, Best Microsoft Exclusive from Digital Trends, EGM Now, Best Shooter, Electric Playground, Best of E3, Game Critics Award, Best of Show, Best Original Game, Best Console Game, Best PC Game, Best Action Game, Best Online Multiplayer, Game Informer, Best in Show, Best Multiplayer Game, Gamers Game of Show, Games Radar, Best Call of Duty Game, what? Game Trailers, Best New IP, Gaming Excellence, Best... It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and you're giving awards to a game that isn't out yet. These awards were given 9 months before the game came out. Are you kidding me? Games, media outlets. What is the purpose of this crap? You are feeding the hype culture with this nonsense, and even the most respectable outlets like Rev3 and Polygon do this as well. Stop it! It's absolute, complete and total bollocks. It's not our job to hype video games. It's our job to assess them and give accurate information, which, unfortunately, you cannot trust anyone, myself included, by the way, if there's a lot of hype prior to the release generated by a particular outlet or personality. We do have to be very careful, and we have to be distinctive when it comes to covering stuff that isn't out yet. We've got to be looking at it through a critical eye. I would absolutely love to see every media outlet look at a build like that and say, well, here's the potential for it. Here's what could go wrong. These are the kind of pieces of information that I think would be very useful. I tried to do that with my new Expo format. The stuff that I did previously, I don't think actually served that purpose. It was more of just demoing the game with the dev there, but now I try to look at it and say, well, here's the potential and here's what could go wrong. I think that is more useful information. And I'd love to see everyone do that. I really would. Titanfall shouldn't be coming away with 50 awards 9 months before it comes out. I think if we're able to temper the hype in general, and we have to do that as gamers as well, we have to stop buying into the hype. We have to stop hyping up games that we don't own or have never played yet, because you're basically becoming an unpaid marketing arm for the companies in question. And let's be honest, you're better than that. Come on, you're better than that. Don't be a whore. Don't be a whore for someone who isn't even paying you. Even whores have some business sense. You apparently don't. Stop pre-ordering video games. Stop getting hyped up for stuff. It's okay to get excited, but when you let it take you over, it affects your perception. And that can mean that by the time a game comes out, you can become ludicrously disappointed. You end up becoming one of these guys on the anti-hype train. And it just generates a toxic environment. And games companies, I understand you have to market your games, but quit it with the nonsense. Specifically, quit with the bullshots and fake trailers and vertical slices. This is half the reason why this anti-hype thing happens in the first place. People turn on titles like Watch Dogs because the footage that comes out later looks worse than the footage we saw previously, and it should be the other way around. It's supposed to improve through its development cycle, not get worse. Oh man, oh me, oh my. Before you pointed out, I do realize that there is a certain sense of irony doing this with Heroes of the Storm footage in the background. But hey, I'll tell you this about Heroes of the Storm. Oh wow, the matchmaking is absolutely balked. I'm more looking forward to the release of this game because hopefully the matchmaking will be better and there'll be a larger player pool. But this game is actually stomp heavy, shockingly enough. If they try to fix the stomp aspect, they have not succeeded in doing so because it's such a heavily objective-based game that the better team will win, which sounds good in theory, and it is. I mean, I think that's got to be the way of it. But currently, there are just not enough players in the game, so there's just too big a skill disparity, and MMR ranking and even being put up against a team that's not a 5-man pre-made as a solo queue, that's difficult. It just doesn't really happen all that much. Yeah, I've been enjoying it a little bit because I got a hold of Zeratul, and I'm apparently pretty good with Zeratul, so I can actually do pretty well there, but no one hero can carry the game in Heroes of the Storm, which is both its strength and its downfall, since you can run into an enemy team which is just going to ruin your day for 20 minutes, but hey, at least it's just 20 minutes, right? It could be an awful lot worse than that. Yeah, Heroes is okay. But yeah, it's got a lot of work to go through, particularly on the technical and engine aspect of things. It needs tightening up control-wise. We need to see the network performance improve. We need to see the frame rate improve. And then see what other formats they want to do and how they intend to sustain it. But it is pretty fun. I'll certainly give it credit for that. I'm having some Dota-style fun without a lot of the headaches of Dota. And I think that was really what I was looking for there. until I get myself a fixed team and start to get back into Dota, which I definitely have the desire to do, considering the additions they've put in lately, which all look pretty damn awesome. Alright folks, there you go. A little bit of a vlog from me. Thank you very much for watching. You can expect occasional streams going forward. We will actually have a special guest on the Co-optional podcast on Tuesday. I'd recommend tuning in because it's going to be Jim Sterling once again, who is a fantastic co-host. So looking forward to that one in particular. It's on the 18th of March, and that's at 3 p.m. EDT. Bear in mind, daylight savings time, folks. If you're in Europe or the UK, it's an hour earlier than usual. You lot don't go into daylight savings until the end of the month, I'm told. And if you miss the VOD, you can catch it over on youtube.com/Polaris. And that usually goes up on the Thursday, 2 days after the live show. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I'll see you next time.